Did you know that Jesus spent the majority of his time eating? The majority of Jesus' earthly ministry was spent around a dinner table. It was spent on the way to, at, and going towards food. And we've been unpacking in our series, Dinner with Jesus, this thought of the gospel is embedded in the dinner table. That the gospel, the good news of Jesus, is embedded. It's laid into a dinner table. So when you break bread with people, when you have a meal with somebody, when you share food with people, you're actually living out the gospel. And I want to begin this morning by asking a very kind of pointed question. And I want you to agree with it or disagree with it. You don't have to agree with it just because Dan says it. I want you to process it in your own mind. Do I agree with this statement? Even a tiny ripple of hope can change the trajectory of someone's life. Do you agree with that or disagree with it? You don't have to answer that out loud, but in your mind, think about that statement. A tiny ripple of hope. And I don't mean hope like, man, I hope my Steelers, I hope we sign, Baker Mayfield. I hope we don't sign him. I hope I get to go out to eat today. I hope that those are earthly hopes. I'm talking about what Paul wrote. I have a hope, an anchor for my soul. It's secure. I hope. I have this belief, this trust in Jesus, that he is who he says he is, and he will do what he says he will do. I have that kind of hope. Now, take that hope and apply it to the sentence, and tell me if you believe it or not. Even the tiniest amount, even just a little ripple of Jesus, the good news, the gospel, the hope, an anchor firm and secure, can change the trajectory of someone's life. I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about a guy. You probably have heard of this man. It's probably a familiar narrative if you grew up in church. Even if you didn't grow up in church, you might have heard of this person. It's a story of a wee little man. And a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a... Well done. Yes, Zacchaeus. We've probably heard of him. Maybe you haven't, and that's okay. But Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up into a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. But as he wanted to see, is this guy the real deal? Is this guy everything that everybody is saying right now? He's claiming to be the Messiah. Is he really the Messiah? He's claiming to be the Son of God. Is he really the Son of God? I need to go see for myself. I have to go check this out. Can he do the unreal, the unimaginable, the unthinkable? Did he really let a sinful woman anoint him? Did he really touch a leper and not get unclean himself? Who is this guy? I need to go and see who he is. Because Zacchaeus had something that I think we all long for. We all crave it. We all need it. And it's hope. An anchor firm and secure. That Jesus is who he says he is. And I want to read from Luke 19. Usually I have the text on the screen and you can follow along. I just want you to listen along today in Luke 19. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. If you have your Bibles open or you have your phone, highlight that or circle that in your Bible. We'll get back to that in a minute. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector and was wealthy, and he wanted to see who Jesus was. He doesn't want to have a conversation with him. He doesn't want to engage with him. He just wanted to see who he was. Who is this guy? Everybody is talking about him. I need to see who this guy is. But being a short man, he could not because of the crowd, and so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. And when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. In verse 7, the church gets involved. All the people saw this and they began to mutter, he is gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house. So Jesus is already at his house. Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. Now I want to unpack a few things as we kind of dissect these just 10 verses. And Bobby talked about this a couple weeks ago when she preached. She gave this preface about a tax collector named Matthew. And Matthew was a tax collector. But the cool thing about Zacchaeus is he was actually the chief tax collector. Does anybody like taxes? Right? No one likes taxes. We see this and we go, ugh, I hate being taxed on my house. I got to live in a house and we're taxed on it. We have to go to work and we're taxed at work. And we're taxed on what we drive to work. We're taxed on what we eat to have energy to go to work. We want to go out after work for a dinner or a drink or whatever. We're taxed on that. We're taxed on the things we buy, the things we own, and the things we earn. We got to be taxed on our Social Security and state tax and federal tax and sales tax and tax. I hate tax, and if you like it, I'll punch you. Like, taxes are awful. We're taxed on everything. I won't really punch you. I probably will in my head, but I won't do it physically. But taxes are a necessary evil. They always have been. But in this culture, and again, I won't belabor what Bobby said a couple weeks ago. I just want you to understand something about Zacchaeus, is he was the chief tax collector, which means he was hated by not just his region, he was hated by everybody. Everybody knew who Zacchaeus was. Because Zacchaeus was one of them. A Jew, taxing his own people, to give to the Romans to keep his people under their thumb of suppression. He is despised. He is loathed and hated. He has no friends, and yet the man with no friends has now got somebody inviting themselves over to his house, if you read the text. In verse 5, it says, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to Zacchaeus, come on down, pal. I must stay at your house. Can I? Think I can come over today? I must. I have to do this. Jesus invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house. And Zacchaeus hasn't had a guest in like forever. Because nobody likes him. So even if Zacchaeus wanted to throw a party and throw out invitations, nobody's coming because we hate this guy. He robs us to pay the Romans to keep us under their subjection. This guy's a jerk. And Jesus does something that is so countercultural. He invites himself over. And he spends the day. This phrase, I must stay at your house today, encompasses, I'm coming over for hours. We're going to have a meal together. You and I are going to sit down because the gospel is embedded in a dinner table, and I'm going to change your life in a dinner table. I'm going to change your life through what we share at the dinner table. And it's interesting that all the things that Zacchaeus was judged on by the people, Jesus doesn't care about them. All the things Zacchaeus was despised for, Jesus looks right on past them. Because even a tiny ripple of hope can change the trajectory of someone's life. Just the tiniest amount of hope. Now, I want to ask a question, and I'm not going to get too crazy with it because I don't want you to think I'm nuts. What would happen if we became like Jesus and invited ourselves over to people's houses? Hey, Darrell, I'm coming over to your house for lunch today. Like, we don't do that anymore, right? If I showed up on your doorstep, I might get a buckshot to the buttocks. Like, I don't want to just show up uninvited in this neck of the woods, right? Some of you guys are crazy with your All right, I'm from Canada. We had, canoe paddles. Like, we didn't have guns growing up. Hockey sticks is what we had. I'll shoot you with my puck, right? I'm not just going to show up uninvited because that's countercultural, but Jesus does that. I must come to your house uninvited because even the tiniest little ripple of hope can change someone's life. So what if we just inverted that into culture today and just said, what if we as being like Jesus said, you know what? I'm not going to invite myself over to your place, but I'm going to say, hey, Caleb, I want to get to know you better. I'm going to grab lunch with you on your schedule whenever you're ready, and I'm going to buy. I just want to get to know you. What would happen if we took the initiative to step towards people? I just want to buy you lunch and get to know you. I see something in you. Like, what would happen if we flipped the script and we began to offer little ripples of hope to people that could change the trajectory of their lives? It's not normal. We usually don't make that ask because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. What if they say no? What if it's just awkward meal or silence meal? And yet Jesus modeled it, breaking bread with people. And there's two main things I want you to catch in the text. Here's the very first one, and you probably passed by it. I know I did when I read it over and over and over this week. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. His intent when he went to Jericho was to pass through. And in fact, if you read the scripture, just a few verses later in the same chapter, it's the triumphal entry. So Jesus has his mind on what's next. He's got his mind focused way ahead. I'm about to die. I'm about to lay down my life for this ungrateful generation of people. He was passing through. He had no intention of staying in Jericho. And this Jesus who was passing through still had eyes open for those in need of hope. Think about that. We get so busy and so focused on what we're doing, and probably every day we walk past people who just need just the littlest ripple of hope that can change the trajectory of their life. And Jesus models for us that he still has eyes open for those in need, even though he's on a mission to go to a cross and die a most painful, excruciatingly brutal death. He still had eyes. So when he reached the spot, he looked up and he saw Zacchaeus. And I want to ask you a question. It's kind of a follow-up to last week's teaching. If you missed last week, you can hop on our YouTube page and watch it. But the question that evolved from last week is Jesus was going to the disciples and was going to pass them by. He had every intention of just walking past the disciples as they struggled through the storm, and he was on the water. So my question would be the follow-up. Do you think Jesus would have made his way to Zacchaeus' house if Zacchaeus didn't take the initiative and the effort to even go and see Jesus? Now, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't claim to be. I don't need to be. Some of you are way smarter than me, and that's fine. But I'm going to give you my answer. I don't think so. I don't think Jesus would have gone over to Zacchaeus' house if Zacchaeus hadn't made the effort and initiative to go and see who Jesus was. Because his intention was to pass by Jericho. Now, I want you to understand something about Jericho. Jericho is affluent. Jericho is a trading hub. Jericho is a desired place. The who's who and the what. Jericho's it. They say balsam trees line the streets of Jericho. And I've never owned said balsam tree, but I guess balsam trees give off a sweet aroma. And so Jericho was actually this really pleasantly smelling, desirable place to live. And Jesus' intention is to go through it. I'm not staying here. You guys think you're better than I am. You don't need me. I'm going to go to people who do. He had every intention of walking right on through Jericho, which I find is very, very interesting to me. That he sought out the people who weren't the favorites. He actually sought out the underdogs, the lost, the least, and the overlooked. That's who Jesus sought out. Not the affluent, trading hum, desired place, sweet aroma, balsam tree-lined city streets of Jericho. The lost, the least, and the overlooked. That's me. I was lost, overlooked, and Jesus sought me out and put his life on the line for me. And if you're lost or you're least or you're overlooked, he's done the same and will do the same for you. That's who Jesus is. And so he says to Zacchaeus, you little rascal, get down here. Because it's natural for us to want to hang out with people like us. But it's also important to give hope to people who aren't. It's natural. Like I want to hang out. I love sports and I love hockey. It's natural for me to want to hang out with people who are like me, that I have a natural bond with when it comes to sports. But it's also important for me to hang out with people who aren't like me. Because even the tiniest little bit of hope, the little bit of ripple of hope, can change someone's life. So he says, Zacchaeus, you little rascal, I'm coming over to your house. I got dibs on top bunk. And he goes over to his house. Little Chris Farley, David Spade reference, Black Sheep, if you ever, never mind, sorry. I got dibs on top bunk. This is one of the funniest movies I've seen. This is my problem. I get something in my head and I just say it. And it's, sorry, not even in my notes. Like, what am I doing right now? Oh, Dan, you're an idiot. All right. You little rascal, coming to your house. Don't give Black Sheep reference. Keep going. How many of you, if Jesus said, I'm coming to your house today, how many of you would have just been like, it's not clean? When I was growing up, Mom, if you're watching, sorry. When I was growing up, I always knew when somebody was coming over. Because it was a mad dash. Blitz cleanup. All hands on deck. Right? We are cleaning up. Well, who's coming over? Well, it doesn't matter who's coming over. We just got to get clean. Because we do that, right? We clean up for company. So when Jesus says to Zacchaeus, I'm coming over, he doesn't even miss a beat. He's like, hey, come on. Because he's so desperate for hope. He's so desperate for someone just to believe in him, to offer him something he's never had before. Imagine if someone famous rolled through the town and they said, hey, I'm coming to your place today. Your thought wouldn't be, I get to hang out with so-and-so. It would be, oh, is my house clean enough? Do I have enough? Is it good enough? Am I enough? And really quickly, we can miss the purpose of Jesus' words. Because it wasn't about Jesus' presence at the house. It was about Jesus' presence in Zacchaeus' life. Don't miss this moment right here. Jesus doesn't care about our homes. He cares about our hearts. He cares about your heart, the condition of your heart, and he's trying to say that to Zacchaeus, I'm coming over, buddy. And Zacchaeus does the unordinary, in my opinion. He's like, oh, okay, come on over. Because Zacchaeus now has found what he was looking for. He didn't want any conversation with Jesus to begin with. I just need to go and see if this guy is the real deal. But there's something about him. There's something that he's offering me that I've never had before, and it's hope. And then it says, salvation came to that house today, literally in verse 9. Today, salvation has come to this house, Jesus says. And it's a great story, and it's 11:15, and everybody lived happily ever after, right? Close the book, story's done. Actually, no, right? Because verse 7 happens. And all the people saw this, they began to mutter. They began to gripe. They began to complain. They began to gossip and slander. How come he was invited to that house and not my house? Why is he going to eat and dine and hang out with a sinner, a tax collector? I'm pretty good. Why isn't he coming to my place? And all of a sudden they make it about them. He wasn't even invited there. How dare he go hang out with the guy that's gotten rich off of our backs? You know, every time that Jesus did this type of behavior, every time he did something against the grain, people complained. Every time he gave this glimmer of hope, they just gossiped. Every time he stepped up and stepped towards people in need of a Savior, of him, the religious people started to slander. And there's an underlying message that I think Jesus wants us to understand. If you want to grow closer to Jesus, you have to ignore what others think of you. If you want to grow closer to Jesus, you have to stop caring about what other people think about you. Because Jesus sought out the least, the lost, and the overlooked, and he passed right by the religious. His intention was to go through Jericho, the epicenter of affluence, on his way to the lost, the least, and the overlooked. Anybody remember these? Gossip mags. Get all the latest 411 on your celebs. Jesus would have been the headline of every one of these if they had these back then. Every single one of them. Jesus dines with sinner. Jesus anointed by a sinful woman. Jesus touches 10 lepers. Jesus spits on someone's face. Right? They would have dragged Jesus' name through the mud. And he chose not to conform to what others thought of him. Because he was on mission. He chose to conform to the will of the Father. Are you conforming to the will of the Father? I think if you want to get closer to Jesus, you're going to have to stop caring what other people think about you and say about you and start to care what Jesus thinks of you and what Jesus says of you. In fact, the disciples in Matthew 18 asked Jesus a question that reveals to me that nobody is immune from this. They asked Jesus, hey, who's going to sit at your right hand? Who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Like, we're pretty important people. We've done a lot of cool things with you. Who's going to sit in the best seat of heaven? We've done some miracles in your name, Jesus. It's probably going to be one of us, right? And he even has two yahoos. They're like, it's going to be us, guys. Right, left, you and me. And then Jesus responds this way. He calls a little child over to him. Hey, little Johnny, come here for a sec. And now he's talking to the crowd. He's talking to his disciples. He's talking to the religious. He says, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like this little children, like this little kid right here, you're never going to enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. See, what I love about this verse is it's like shots are fired. Jesus responds just so brilliantly because he's been asked a question that can actually cause this divide amongst the disciples and the religious leaders. And so he calls over innocence. He calls over this little kid. And I picture this little kid was probably playing with some friends. Just picture this little boy. They didn't have soccer balls back then, but he's kicking a little soccer ball around. He's like, hey, come here for a sec. And you know what the kid does? The kid runs over, and probably in the history of this, the context of this, Jesus probably sits down, and the little boy probably comes and just sits right on his knee. Because he doesn't judge Jesus. He doesn't size Jesus up. He doesn't have any prerequisites. And what he says is, you see this little boy? He ran right over to me. He didn't judge me. He didn't need to know anything. He didn't know the history and discipline of the Wesleyan. He didn't know anything. He just ran right over me. You guys can learn a lot from this little guy. There's not a care in this world from this boy. Because his mom and dad are going to take care of him. We can learn a lot from a little boy. Man, I get so stressed about stuff sometimes. And Jesus just says, be like the little children. There's not a care. They don't care. Have you ever heard a kid say, whew, I better shape up. I've been acting like a kid. Whew. Hang on a second, Mom and Dad. You don't even have to tell me this. I'm being bad. I better stop. I better act my age. You're right. No kid ever says that. No kid stop and self-corrects because they don't care what people think of them. They don't judge you. Now, in our culture, if you walked up to a little kid and asked them to come over, you might be arrested. So I'm not encouraging that. But if you've ever walked up to a little kid and just said hi to them, more often than not, it's hi. There's no prerequisites with kids. There's no judgment from kids. There's no condemnation from kids. There's no gossip and slander and malice and backbiting from kids. And Jesus says, be like them. Be like the little children. That's not what I do sometimes. I size people up. Ooh, I don't know. And just a few chapters later, Jesus tells the disciples and he tells the Pharisees, in essence, the question, who's going to be in the kingdom of heaven first? And he says, I tell you the truth, the tax collectors and the prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you. Yipes. That is not the answer the disciples were looking for. And what he's doing in Luke chapter 19 is he is subtly telling them, I'm going to pass through and pass by the creme de la creme, the people who don't even think they need me. The place and the people where everybody wanted to be, it was coveted. And there's this little lad named Zacchaeus, and it's common for Jesus to see the unordinary and to see things in people that we don't see. It was like you and I, we don't think about breathing, we don't think about blinking. Jesus didn't think about it. It was natural to him to see the lost, the least, and the overlooked. And he approaches Zacchaeus and he says, I'm coming to your house today. But there's a second thing I want you to see, and before we run out of time, I want to hit this. I want you to catch this. We read it together already, but it was verse 3. It says, he wanted to see Jesus, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. Have you ever been to a venue to watch a show, to watch a concert, and you're stuck behind this guy? Yeah. A few years ago, Kim and I went to see Ben Rector. He's a musician. He's an artist, one of my favorites. And I was constantly doing this the whole show because I had that in front of me. I'm like, just slouch. I know your mom didn't tell you not to slouch, but would you just slouch for a minute or tuck your ears back or something? Like, I can't see past you. I paid good money to see him, Ben Rector, not the back of your head, buddy. And I was the whole show. I'm like, this is awful. This is the worst experience of my life right now. And it was painful. I remember a couple years ago, we were at a Christmas parade. And it was 3 or 4 people deep, and we had gotten there early because our kids were a little bit younger. They were 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And so they were in front, and then it was myself, and then there was 3 or 4 people back. And there was a couple kids kind of standing behind me and then beside their parents. And I remember my daughter Braylon and my son Eli went back. They squeezed between Kim and I, and they grabbed these 2 little kids, and they brought them right up. And they put them in front of them because they said, we can see over them, but they can't see over you guys. They didn't know these kids. They wanted them to see Santa. They've got us. If they miss Santa, the Christmas is ruined. Does it matter to you at all if you're blocking anyone from seeing Jesus? Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. The crowd hated Zacchaeus, and so the crowd kept Zacchaeus from seeing Jesus. The crowd could have parted the seas so Zacchaeus could stand in the front. They didn't want him to. They didn't like him. So they blocked him. They kept him. Does it matter to you if you're keeping people or you're blocking people from seeing Jesus, the real Jesus, the goodness of Jesus, the hope of Jesus? Maybe it's because of the way you treat others that you're blocking the real Jesus. Maybe it's the way you talk to or about others that's keeping them from seeing the real Jesus. Maybe it's the way you live Monday to Saturday and come to church and play Sunday. But you're keeping people from seeing the real Jesus. So if a tiny ripple of hope can change the trajectory of someone's life, and someone famous and smarter than me said every action has an opposite and equal reaction, then the opposite must be true of this. That if the tiniest ripple effect of hope can change the trajectory of someone's life, then the tiniest ripple of negativity or hurt can change the trajectory of someone's life. Do people receive hope when they engage with you or just hurt? Do people leave your presence inspired or verbally injured? Do people leave feeling welcomed or do they leave feeling wounded? Do people know that you are for them or do they fear you're against them? A ripple of hope, a ripple of encouragement, a ripple of positivity can change the trajectory of someone's life. And I want to be a trajectory changer for Jesus. For hope and encouragement, for life transformation. I want to be like my little kids who go, excuse me, Dad, there's little kids back here they can't see. Can you move, please? They need to see Santa. They need to see Jesus. So some of you know this, some of you don't. I love sports, right? And so I've always coached. Coaching my daughter in softball all the way up, and I coached Eli in baseball when he would play, and now I'm coaching Harrison's baseball team. I'm the assistant coach. I love it. I love being at the fields. I love interacting with people. And last Monday, I was standing at the fields. There was parents coming in, dropping their kids off. Some of them that was their first time playing. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, Dad?" And I shook his hand. And I was like, "You doing okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm like, "Are you sure? You sure you're okay?" Tears started coming down his face. He said, "My 13-year-old daughter's in Pittsburgh Hospital having her third brain surgery. We're not sure if she's going to make it." That's a man that needs just a ripple of hope that will change the trajectory of his life. Because right now, there doesn't seem to be much hope in his life. About 3 minutes later, a mom comes over and drops her kid off. Says, "Can you just keep an eye on him? He's 7, so he's full bore, but he's already had 2 open heart surgeries. He can't go full bore for an hour and a half, but he wants to because he wants to be like the other kids. Can you just keep an eye on him?" "Absolutely, I will, Mom." Just a ripple of hope. Every opportunity that we have needs to be a trajectory of hope for people. Do people leave your presence feeling inspired or injured, welcomed or wounded, hopeful or just hurt? In the next couple weeks, you're going to hear a push from here, from the pulpit, from this platform, about an unlikely hero. You're going to receive today, when you walk out, either a postcard that you can give to somebody. We've got invite cards. And there's a guy who's a pastor at Calvary Church up in Irwin that just had this vision. And he said, "This Easter, we're having an ambitious goal. In a divided world, what if churches led the way towards unity? Rather than letting our differences divide us, what if our commonalities united us?" So churches across Westmoreland County are working together this Easter to share the incredible message of Easter. Churches from different Christian traditions will be holding Easter services with their own liturgies and traditions while contextualizing a similar message about the unlikely hero, Jesus, of our world. So this pastor sent out emails and phone calls, and I said, I want to hear about your vision. I want to hear what you're going after. And 13 churches, which I love, 13 churches in Westmoreland County said, I want to reach 1%. There's 350,000 people in our county alone. 320 have no religious affiliation. Which means if Jesus returned today, 320,000 people would spend eternity apart from Jesus. That should rattle us. And so 13 churches, all led by Calvary Church. This was his initiative to go after this. And I said, yeah, I want to be on board with that. Because I serve an unlikely hero. His name's Jesus. He was born of a virgin in a manger, in a barn, with some animals beside him. Lived for 33 years and then gave his life for me. That's a guy I'll follow. And that's a guy I want us to follow, and it's a guy I want friends and people like that dad whose daughter's had 3 brain surgeries and they don't know if he's going to make it. She's going to make it. I want him to know Jesus and have hope. And so that's what we're going to go after. As a church, we're going to invite people to hear hope about the unlikely hero, a guy named Jesus. And I'll just say this, you're an unlikely hero. You're an unlikely hero. There are people in your life that you're a hero to, and you just don't even realize it yet. And I'm going to share my story about my mom and my dad and how I grew up, and I think you'll be inspired by it. How God used an unlikely hero in an unlikely situation and unlikely circumstances to make a difference in someone's life. So who can you bring this Easter Sunday? You know that Easter is literally 3 weeks away. I said at the very beginning of service, what is happening with the speed of life right now? It's going so fast. Have you even thought about Easter? Have you thought about who you're going to invite to have a little ripple of hope that can change the trajectory of their life?